People, you're all set.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Welcome.
With that, I will go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. This is the Scarborough Board of Education regular business meeting for Thursday, May 6th, 2021. Could I have the attendance, please?
Mrs. Skiftis.
Here.
Dr. Gill.
Here.
Miss Casalonis.
Here.
Miss Blayton.
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom.
Here.
Mrs. Sider.
Here.
Mrs. Turner.
Here.
Mr. Bennett.
Here.
Ms. Giftis.
Here.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda item 4.0 is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda this evening? Seeing none. Agenda item 5.0 is public comment on agenda items. Same spiel I give every week. If you would like to make a public comment, please raise your little blue hand if you are in as an attendee of our meeting, and I will be able to promote you to a panelist. Anyone wishing to speak should please address their comments to the chair. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. I will play an alarm to let you know that your time is up. And I ask that you please respect the 3-minute time limit. We did not receive any emails this week via our email public comment. I'm not seeing any hands raised. And so with that, I will go ahead and close public comment this evening. Agenda item 6.0 is the Superintendent's Report.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about the May enrollment, and we'll pull up that slide and we'll start. There we go. So I'll be talking about the past, present, and for each building, and we'll start with the high school. So currently we have 942 students. A year ago we had 984. We have 8 homeschoolers. We have 235 students doing 100% remote, and we have 707 in the hybrid model. Go to the middle school, currently 703. A year ago, 701. Homeschool, 21. 100% remote, we have 109. And with our hybrid model, we have 594. Wentworth School, currently we have 612 students. A year ago, we had 673. We have 17 homeschool students, and we have 79 students who are doing 100% remote, and 535 in the hybrid model. As we look at Blue Point, we have currently 197. A year ago, 203. And when we look at all 3 K2 schools, we have 33 homeschool students. Back to Blue Point, we have 34 100% remote and 163 hybrid. As we look at 8 Corners, we currently have 227. A year ago, 243. We have 49 doing 100% remote and 178 in the hybrid model. As we look at Pleasant Hill, we currently have 184. A year ago, 205. We have 33 doing 100% remote, and in hybrid, we have 151. So the grand total, currently, total enrollment is 2,865. A year ago, 3,009. We have 79 homeschool students, and we have 559 100% remote. And finally, we have 2,309 who are in the hybrid model. Thank you. I could go on to the next slide. That would be terrific. So what I would like to do tonight is talk about our fall school reopening plan. It's obviously always a work in progress, and we have been doing a lot of work thanks to everybody who's been involved with this. So on the next slide, I'd like to talk about the outcomes of this presentation. And really what tonight is to talk about is the progress and the planning ahead as we go full-time in September. We'll identify some obstacles and how we plan to address them. Harman Associates has been a long-time relationship with the Scarborough schools. They're architects, and they've done a lot of work within the district in the past. If you remember the Wentworth School, Harman Associates were very involved in designing and having that school built. So what we've tried to do is use them this year to look at our facilities as we begin to plan ahead. And again, I can't help but emphasize the outstanding work that they have done. And I truly feel I have a deep respect for them over my career, just watching how Harman has done a magnificent job working with schools. In this slide, what we're trying to do is talk about the recent changes in the CDC guidelines. At one point in time, students' desks had to be 6 feet apart. That has changed, where they're going to be 3 feet apart. And so when we look at the grade level and the number of students, what we have in front of us is what we're planning for September. So for instance, in K2, we'll have 16 students per classroom. That's a maximum amount of students that we can have at that level. In 3 through 5, the maximum number of students is 17. As we look at the middle school, 6 through 8, we can get 18 students within a classroom. And finally, at the high school, 9 through 12, we'll have 19 students per classroom. So thanks to Todd Jepson, our facilities director, he worked with the Harman Associates to begin to look at each building and some of the classrooms and how can we get desks in those classrooms per grade level, as I just went through the numbers that are broken apart from K2, 3, 5, 6, 8 in the high school. And so here, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about this diagram. I don't want to lose you because I know the graphic is kind of hard to understand. But if you can look at the small orange squares, and if you actually counted those small squares, at this point in time, this is Wentworth School, a typical classroom. And when you would come up with 17 desks, and those desks are 3 feet apart. And again, that's the small orange squares that you see there. So what we try to do is to look at the actual classroom furnishings, such as built-ins, looking at bathrooms, looking at sinks and counters, and your typical classroom, and how many desks could we get into each classroom. And again, the criteria we came up with was 17 desks at Wentworth School. As we move on, we'll look at the next slide that talks about the primary schools. As I mentioned earlier, at the K2 schools, we'll have 16 desks. And again, on your leisure, if you want to look at this diagram and count the small little squares, you'll see that those squares represent the 16 desks. Harman looked at traffic flow, which is critically important, particularly those 3 bullets there: emergency egress, the bathroom entrances, and we have some supply built-in areas, cabinets within those classrooms as well. So that's the primary school. Again, we're looking at 16 desks per classroom. As we look at the middle school, as a reminder, we can get 18 desks within a typical classroom. And this is an opportunity, again, for us to try to begin to make sure that we're meeting the 3-foot requirement between each desk. And with this particular diagram, the desk may need to be moved on a daily basis if indeed people need to access supplies. But we didn't think that was any way of not providing this. We thought that flexibility that people would be willing to move around if they had to, so people can get their supplies. As we go to the next slide, here we're looking at a small number of students per class, means additional teachers, which will be required as we transition from hybrid to in-person full-time learning. We have in this current budget budgeted for 17 new classroom teachers. This is a must. It's got to happen in order for us to have full-time learning in the fall. Fortunately, we have received ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 grants this year. So as you can see, we're taking some of those positions out of those grants, and we're very fortunate to get that money. But the message here is that we need 17 teachers to open school next fall. As we look at retrofitting spaces, which is going to happen in order to open for September, and we're going to be spending the summer working on this. Again, we need to repurpose space for additional classrooms. And this is a challenge, particularly with certain buildings, but we know we can do it. And the work will be completed over the summer. Mr. Jepson, our facilities director, is already making plans, and we're going to be able to do this. I just want people to know that. Some staff specialists will need to float from classroom with carts. Again, just to have the flexibility for next year, that will need to happen. Next slide talks a little bit more about the repurposing space. Each school must have 2 clinics, a respiratory clinic and a regular school clinic. Typically, in a normal year, we only have 1 clinic per building, and that's just a regular school clinic. But because of COVID, we have to have that extra respiratory clinic. So an example of repurposing space at Blue Point, currently the nurses occupy an unused classroom for their respiratory clinic. This space will need to be transformed back into a regular student classroom. The proposal is to divide the current teacher workroom into half respiratory clinic and maintain remaining half as a teacher workroom. So what I wanted to show the public is that's an example of repurposing our space over the summer to try to get another classroom. And that's the hard work that we'll be doing, but we know we can do it and it will be done. On the next slide, talks about lunchroom mealtime requirements. So this is, I have to say, this is really challenging. And my association, the Superintendents Association, did put a letter to, I believe, the governor, talking about the lunchroom, that it's a real challenge to have students be 6 feet apart while they eat it. And I think everybody's feeling that throughout the state, particularly the lunchrooms, and trying to meet that requirement. So each phase will have to create a plan accordingly, and students will eat lunch throughout the buildings and the grounds. And that is something that each building is starting to plan for. And, you know, I was in the high school meeting the other day, and They were talking about that and just kind of talking out loud the different spaces that will need to happen. And it can happen outdoors as well, and certainly on a beautiful day in the fall. The next slide, please. So why not go back full-time in person learning for the remainder of the school year? 2 bullets there are really critical. Not enough time to refit and repurpose existing spaces. We're pretty tight, as you very well know, within the schools, and we need the time over the summer to refit and get those spaces ready for September. In addition, we don't have enough staff because we're limited on how many students we can put in a typical classroom. For instance, at the elementary level, we can't put 20 students in a classroom. We're required to have 16 and no more because of the square footage and the requirements from the state. So with the purpose of trying to hire 17 teachers is to allow for more classroom space. And we obviously need to get going with that and get people hired and ready for September. So those are the 2 big reasons why we're not going back to school full-time at this point in time. The last slide talks about the fall reopening task force teams. So each building, it has developed a team with parents, community members, and staff. And they come together, and the purpose is to really continue to hone in on what needs to be done for the opening of school. They'll have weekly meetings. And again, the idea is to troubleshoot, to update people on what has been done and areas that we need to continue to think about. Those meeting notes of each committee will be on the website and for people to review. So again, I was fortunate to be assigned to the high school, and I thought the meeting went exceptionally well. It's great to get the feedback from community members and parents, and you know, it's just an opportunity to brainstorm together what needs to happen and how can we do this together. So it's a collective group thinking about the details of opening school. And I believe that is the last slide. And again, I just like to thank everybody for their contributions, their patience, and we're really excited to march forward and get ready for full opening of school in September.
Thank you, Sandy, for that comprehensive update. Is there anyone on the board who would like to ask Sandy any questions before we move on to his next report? Max, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about like why, I don't, you might not know this, but like since like teenagers at like the middle school and the high school are physically larger, is there any reason they don't have to be spaced apart further, or like why smaller children can't be closer together? Like, is there a reason? Because like you think like they'd be able to like project saliva or whatever further the larger that they are, right?
Good point. And Max, really what we have to go by is the regulation. And that's just CDC saying 3 feet across the board. They don't break it down by grade level, age level, or anything like that.
Yeah, totally fair. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you again, Sandy. Before we advance the slide deck, because I don't think that the slide in here, I did ask Sandy to invite Mr. Legage to speak to us and give us a bit of a spring sports update. As you all know, last week the governor changed the outdoor masking regulations, and then the Maine Principals Association also voted on some different guidelines. And so I thought that it would be timely to have our athletic director come and give us an update about where we are with that.
Well, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about athletics and student activities. I'll give you a little bit update on activities as well, because there's some great things happening there. I'll certainly say that spring sports have gotten off to a good start. The transition to the new COVID rules has been a little challenging, but we're working through those. I really think the struggle for student athletes is more around the contradiction in the rules. You know, you step on the playing field and the rules are a little different than when you step off the playing field. But we continue to provide reminders, and people are, you know, the kids are doing a really good job, you know, the best they can, you know, sticking with the rules that are in place. I was asked to, I guess the issue of face masks came up, and I was asked to speak specifically about that. We are following the MPA rule as it relates to that, which is essentially the governor's order that when outside, everyone still has a face mask with them. And if they're, you know, within 6 feet of somebody, that they pull their face mask on and cover their face. The exception for athletes, of course, is when they're engaged in physical activity during a practice or a game. We also ask coaches to do the same thing, have their face mask with them all the time, and pull their face mask up if they're within 6 feet of somebody. And obviously for coaches, that's quite often that they're within 6 feet of somebody. We ask the same thing of officials. When officials come to our facility and officiate games, we require them to continue to fill out the screening forms as we always have. And we require them to have a face mask and to use that face mask when they're within 6 feet of people, even during the game. So, you know, face off kind of in lacrosse, the officials have to pull their masks up, that sort of thing. So everybody's been really good about that, doing the best they can. There really hasn't been any pushback on that. The addition of spectators at games has certainly been exciting for the teams. In terms of spectator management, I have to say that I'm really proud of our Scarborough community. I think the families, our Scarborough families, for the most part, have really embraced following the rules, just because it's a, you know, opportunity to be able to come see a child. So you do what you got to do. I will say that most of my time in the spectator crowd, unfortunately, is spent dealing with our visiting team spectators, not really our own spectators. So that's good and bad, you know, in a way, but it's so far so good. People seem to be following the rules that we have in place. I think that our game management structure that we share with our teams has worked out. We, if you've been to a game, not to get into the weeds of anything, but if you've been to a game, the area between the turf field and the baseball, softball field, we really lock down that area, and it's really just for student athletes, coaches, game personnel. We also were faced with a couple rules in terms of baseball, softball. Dugout fencing is required. It happened to work out this year because we couldn't have kids in the dugout anyways because of the social distancing. Our dugouts just aren't large enough. So we were able to set up a system outside of the backstops of the dugouts for the teams to sit. And so we kind of killed two birds with one stone this year. We do have some money, I think, in our CIP account for next year to cover that rule, to be able to put some fencing up in front of all the dugouts. That is going to be a requirement before next season. So, and I think we're on track in terms of the budget to see that through. But this year it worked out well. We couldn't be in the dugout anyway, and so we covered kind of two birds with one stone there. I would be remiss if I didn't continue to bring up the turf track project and the daily reminder that we have, at least my staff and coaches, of how important it's going to be to refresh that facility. And that is a place that we really need to pass that referendum, or however it goes. Hopefully it'll go through CIP and then on to a vote. But it's a daily reminder when we have kids practicing and playing games that that field needs to be refreshed. We also, community services has done some great work getting the other fields ready, but there continues to be struggles at the other facilities. We continue to have infrastructure type issues, fencing that's in rough shape, tennis courts, the court service in rough shape. I don't know if anybody has watched a tennis match, but they can only use 3 of the 4 courts we have. The 4th court is so bad, we don't dare to do varsity matches on it. They use it for a warm-up area, things like that, but we don't play matches on the 4th court. So, the facility is aging. It's not just a turf track. And, we've kind of learned that there needs to be those incremental investments in those facilities, or we're going to be faced with major investments when the whole thing fails. And so I'll just continue to keep that in the front of mind of folks, the whole facility issues and safety things related to that. A little bit about activities. I'll share that the English department coming up here June 5th is planning their Shakespeare in the Park performance, and really neat idea. When they first talked to me about doing that, they had this idea of wanting to do Shakespeare, and we kind of talked this idea about Shakespeare in the Park, and it never really evolved. They ended up, I think, doing it their first year or 2 in the auditorium. This year, they're actually going to do it outside. So it truly is going to be Shakespeare in the Park at Memorial Park on June 5th. I think the rain date is Sunday, June 6th. And there's 2 or 3 shows. So if you want to be looking for those flyers, there's quite a few students involved in that. And the reports that I'm getting are really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. The ECOS group has started a kind of like a subcommittee of ECOS, this solar committee that they're doing, where they're kind of getting focused on that. So I think that's kind of an exciting addition to the ECOS group. And Model United Nations is really getting geared up. They're starting to do their country assignments, getting geared up for, their event that's coming up that they participate in. So there's really some great things happening all around. And I guess, that word normalcy has been used a lot. And I'm excited to say that, my department probably is being allowed right now through the rules to provide as close to normal experiences as kids would have. And so it's exciting. We are having a very successful spring athletic season right now. I'm knocking on wood right now, but we're having a very successful spring season right now in terms of wins and losses as well. And I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Alicia.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Mike. It's been really great to watch the kids out there playing and seeing them get socialization and everybody's smiling. A couple of things I've noticed, it seems like the perimeter spectator setup. I wonder when the way it's set up, if that actually encourages people to cluster together more than if all of the spectator opportunities were available, so people could have more room to socially distance?
I think the setup that we have now is the very best we can. If for the baseball field, it's the 114 parking lot. It's very expansive. I think that people could line up all the way down the access road and all the way to the 114 road. It's tremendously expansive, and you could really be any place up there and see the baseball game. It's actually probably the best seat in the house there. In terms of softball, I don't think that we're in any different situation than we've been in. We had one bleacher section behind the backstop fence, and we've added 2 bleacher sections actually in left field. And the comments that I've gotten so far have been, can we have bleachers in left field all the time, even after COVID? I think that we do take up some parking spots there, but I think it does afford even maybe more seating, more opportunity, because people used to come into the campus and really just stand behind the backstop fence, and it was very crowded with both visiting team and home team. This really spreads it out. We're able to put 2 bleacher sections there. We've always had 1. I think in terms of spectators for the turf field, I have not seen the large bleacher section be so filled that there wasn't seating. I haven't seen that at any game this spring. And people are allowed to stand on the fence line, not all the way around, but on that side, as they first enter. So I haven't noticed that there's been any concerns about that. I don't see how we could open it up any differently, partly because of trying to, I continue to try to do everything I can to reduce exposures, because at the end of the day, I want to try to keep as safe an environment as I can for our kids so that they can continue to have a season and be able to participate in postseason. We've had a couple of close encounters. Thankfully, it worked out that it hasn't shut a team down yet, but we certainly don't want that, especially as we approach the end of the regular season and the start of the postseason. It's really going to be upon us. Essentially, the spring season is the month of May. That's not uncommon. It's very much like that, but really at the already this Saturday, to be honest, we've started postseason with some sports. This Saturday is the tennis individual qualifier. So we've even started some postseason with some of our sports. So I haven't seen that there's been an issue with needing to change the spectator seating. Maybe JV softball, but JV softball is no different than it's always been. For JV softball, we were able to put the team benches on the inside of the big fence, which allowed us to continue to have spectator seating over at the 114 softball field, as we always have. That's not changed.
So if I understand you correctly, you don't have any plans to open up the fields so that people can use that as spectator areas and allow for additional social distancing?
I don't have any plans to change from what we're doing right now.
What's your rationale, Mike?
Well, what I said is my job is to try to reduce as many exposures as possible. I think the seating is working out fine right now. I don't see overcrowding, and I don't see a need for spectators to come in that middle section where student athletes are, especially during baseball games, because of the team benches being outside that fence area now, and softball, and also lacrosse. We don't have the concession open. There's no need for people to come around that side.
Okay. I mean, I guess I see it very differently than you, but that's okay. Other thing I did want to ask about is that, the girls softball team has had announcers and music for like 10 years, and that hasn't been happening this year, but I've noticed that the boys lacrosse is still getting that, and that really is concerning to me. So I'm hoping that we can, I understand that you've said that there's too much going on with the fields to allow the girls to have music and announcing. That to me seems like an inequity, and I'm really hoping that that can stop.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. The girls have had announcing at their first game today. Today, we asked that none of the teams have announcing because we had 6 events going on all at the same time. And
The
so
girls, the announcers, they had to turn their music
that
down.
was the only day that we did not have announcing for any of the teams.
Well, out in the park,
The last softball game that we had, they had the middle school students here and they were doing full announcing, full music, everything.
no, out in the parking lot, nobody could hear the announcer or the music. And when we inquired, we were told that you asked them to turn it down, but the lacrosse is like super loud. We can hear every play of the boys lacrosse game and their music. And the girls have walk-up songs that they look forward to, and you can't hear it. And I know today they weren't allowed to have an announcer or music. And the other game, they were told that they had to turn it down because it was too loud and interfering with other sports. And that seems inequitable. And so I'm hoping that that's something you'll change.
Yeah, I don't see an inequity.
I do when it's a boy versus girl thing. I do.
We're doing the same thing for baseball as we do for softball. And if there's multiple games going on in the facility, then we do our very best to try to not have one sound over the other.
Well, when the boys lacrosse are playing and the girls softball's playing, we can hear the boys perfectly, but the girls were told to turn it down. So I'm asking you if you could please address that.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Mr. Legage, for coming and for giving us your time on a Thursday night to give us an update. I couldn't agree more how exciting it is to see the kids out there. And, you know, I'm sure that you are very well aware that the other leagues in town are looking to you for guidance and following your lead. And so I appreciate your strong leadership when it comes to these new regulations and rules, because it really does set a tone for the whole district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7.0 is the chair's report. The first item on my chair's report tonight is I would like to have a discussion of a return to hybrid meetings. As we had discussed back in December, you know, we actually did hold one hybrid meeting while I was chair. And with the social distancing and the case numbers going up and some of my own personal feelings about it, I had decided that I wasn't particularly comfortable being in person. And then with the technology piece of really the person who is chairing the meeting needs to be in person if any of the board members are going to be at home, created a environment where really we all kind of just needed to be united in solidarity here, that we were just going to do remote meetings. And so again, I appreciate everyone's willingness to do that. And I think we've really made it work for the last 5 months. We are in a groove here. I feel more comfortable. As of today, actually, and I have the shakes a little bit from my shot. As of yesterday, I got my second shot. And so my goal is to be comfortable and behind the dais again. And so we can discuss. I'm happy to have this be a full board discussion. It's certainly not a decision that I would, you know, that I'm trying to make by myself. But if people are comfortable with it, I think that we are ready, maybe as early as our next meeting in June. Not in June, in May, to be in person. we'll continue to follow all of our masking and social distancing guidelines, obviously. In-person attendance, as long as I've already spoken with some individual board members about this. As long as I'm chair, I have absolutely no problem with people attending remotely. Right now, it's protected by the governor's executive order that we are allowed to meet in this format. And so I have absolutely no problem with board members who wish to remain at home. And you don't have to explain your reason to anybody. You can just be at home. And that goes for staff as well. I mean, this is technically our meeting. So, you know, we set the rules, and I say anybody who would like to be at home is welcome to be at home. We do have to consider the space capacity inside chambers. Town council has been successfully running in-person meetings, hybrid meetings for quite a while, but we do have significantly more people in attendance typically at a school board meeting than they do, just because we generally invite a lot of our staff and support staff. And so that is something that we'll need to take into consideration. We don't currently have a workshop scheduled for the second meeting in May, but if we do, and it turns out that it seems like it's going to be a large workshop, I may just make the call to have that meeting be remote as well, so that we're not trying to jump back into our first hybrid meeting and then figure out how we're going to accommodate extra people in the room and all of that. One thing I have noticed, I don't know if you guys have been watching town council meetings, they have tried to accommodate the full council lately, and 2 people have to sit with their back to the camera. And so that is not necessarily my favorite format. And that might be something that, you know, we can work with IT and the folks who do the recording to configure the tables a little bit differently. But ultimately, I think my preference would be that we stick to a more hybrid meeting style so that people aren't sitting with their backs, you know, to the camera during a full meeting. And so I would love to hear if anyone has any thoughts about any of that. Seeing none. Oh, Max.
I just want to say, like, I would love to meet in person, even our next meeting, because I'd love to have at least one last in-person meeting before I go away. So thank you so much for like figuring this out.
I've been thinking about you, Max, for sure. I figured that would be something that you would really hope for. So
oh, for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Shannon.
I just have a logistics question. Does it matter? How do I word this? Does it matter for spacing requirements if somebody is fully vaccinated or not?
That's a good question. Obviously, all of the social distancing and mask mandate rules are completely irregardless of whether our people are vaccinated. And so it's not like if 2 people are vaccinated, we can sit closer and we don't have to wear masks. Like all the guidelines are still the same. And so for adults, it's 6 feet of distance with a mask and the plastic partition. Those are the current indoor meeting guidelines. Not seeing any other hands. So with that, I will take that y'all trust me and that I can coordinate this. We'll figure out a fair way to accommodate people who would like to be in person, because I'm sure there are people who have preferences, and you know, I'll do my best to accommodate everybody's preferences as we move forward. So thank you. The next portion of my chair's report is to thank our teachers. As everyone knows, this is Teacher Appreciation Week. And as I just mentioned, I got my second shot yesterday. And so I spent a fair amount of the day watching TV today and taking it easy. And so I heard a quote during a commercial, and I know this is sounding very inspiring already, but it had to do with empathy. And I'm not going to get the quote right or remember the words, but I do remember how the quote made me feel. And that was to say that the best way to make our own lives better is to make the lives of someone else better. And I thought to myself, if that doesn't, you know, kind of encapsulate the way I want to work as a board member and the way that our teachers I know work for our students, then I don't know what does. And so on behalf of the board, I want to thank all of our teachers and dedicated staff who put our kids first in order to make their lives better every day. Thank you. And I'm totally crying. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to say? Thank you. We think you're all amazing. And this has been a really hard time. And so, you know, we hope you're feeling the love. I love the posts. Our PTAs do an amazing job celebrating our teachers. And so I hope that this has been a good week and that you guys are feeling the love. With that, agenda item 8.0 is committee reports.
All right, communications, short and sweet. Just a reminder, the In the Know is in the leader now. I was really excited to see our first publication. The committee is solely focused right now really on budget communication. Need to make sure that we're getting that out and letting the community know. Our next meeting will be Monday, May 17th at 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Leanne. Finance.
Thanks. This is just a reminder of the schedule. And actually, as of a couple hours ago, there's another workshop that's going to happen that's not on this, but more just for the rest of the board's knowledge. Is the town council is putting in a budget specific workshop on the 18th. April. I'm looking at you to confirm that that's right. Yep, on the 18th. And it's just the town council, but they've asked that Kate and I just be available just to answer any questions. So I think it's probably what we thought maybe last night was going to be, but we didn't get to it with the audit. So it's just another opportunity to do that. Kelly, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Thanks. And then I guess just some positive news to report. So since the first reading, we had our department review meeting a couple of weeks ago with town council. So just a reminder for people listening, every department has an individual meeting with the town finance committee where they just review the budget in more detail. And the ask from the finance committee this year was to come to those department reviews with any updates on how they can close the gap to get from what the first reading was to the 3% goal. And, you know, through some movements on our side, we were able to reduce our budget ask by about $1.1 million, which is going to go a long way in getting to that 3% goal. So really positive there. And, you know, most of that comes from adjustments to our insurance rates, as well as the ability to use some of the ESSER funding for the teacher roles that Sandy talked about earlier. I think that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions. I guess I'll just wrap by saying the next step is really, you know, our second reading. It's likely, or it's possible, I should say, that we'll get further direction from them after the workshop, and we might have to make additional adjustments, but it's also possible that we won't have to. So right now things are looking good. Stay tuned.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
Long range facilities planning, we had sort of a full meeting in early April. And as everyone's been discussing sports, obviously the mitigation for the spring season was finished and the turf and track are usable. And I will echo what everyone has said. It's been so great to see all the activity going on out there. The turf and track are going to require seasonal testing to ensure the safety, with the next test scheduled in July, hopefully to be ready for the fall season. The mitigation costs could range anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 per season. Those will continue for FY22 to be funded through community services. And as Mike said earlier, it's so important for everyone to know that this facility is truly on its last leg. And with any one of these seasonal tests, we could get the news that there is no mitigation to be done and the field is just no longer usable. So that leads to the next point, that the replacement of the facility is in our FY22 CIP budget. It's still a work in progress, but it is in there. And district leadership is continuing to evaluate transitioning the facility from the town over to the school. So I would expect we'll hear from them in the coming months about that. Can you go to the next slide, Kelly, please? Thank you. We also discussed the new primary school project. Those planning costs are also in our FY22 CIP budget. And the building steering committee is going to be reconvening in the coming months. But for now, there is a small subgroup within the building steering committee that is working on a presentation for the council to get them up to speed on all the work that's already been done and, you know, get their input on next steps for that project. And finally, we discussed the playground and the ADA compliance, which they are technically ADA compliant. However, they are not truly accessible for all of our students. There are funds in the FY22 CIP budget to address some of those issues that still remain so that all of our students can access the playgrounds. And I want to thank Mike and Todd for coming to our meeting and giving us updates on some of these things. That's it for me.
Thank you, Kristen. Nick.
Hello. I don't have a whole lot to say. As you know, negotiations is somewhat of a closed process, but I did want everyone to know that we're still continuing to work on those 3 contracts that we've been talking about that all expire on June 30th. The educational support professionals, or who called ESP, it's not extrasensory perception, sensory perception. Every time I say ESP, I think of that. Bus drivers and the food services and custodial staff. And so we're continuing that work, and our next meeting is on Monday, May 10th at 4:30. That's it.
Great, thank you.
All right, we have been meeting as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We've actually moved into starting to review the climate survey data. We started with the elementary school survey results, reviewing that and making some determinations about it in the sense of reading data and understanding how to interpret the results that we're seeing. Our next step is to move to the middle school and the high school data, which was presented as one survey. The middle school and the high schoolers took the same survey. So there was an ask to segregate that information so that we could look at the middle school separately from the high school. So that's our next steps. Coming up, our next meeting is May 12th. And then we are, just to give a heads up of what's coming up in the future, we are planning a board meeting workshop where our consultants from MAAC will come and present, do a presentation on the climate survey results and what they showed for the district.
Thank you, Shannon. Updates.
Yeah, just obviously the budget, which I just talked about, is a priority right now for town council. And the other item that they're focusing on, or I guess it's over now, is the GMO, which passed last night. So I think I raised that at the last meeting, but that did pass last night. One other thing that I don't know much about, but I'll come back with more information next meeting, is I guess about a decade ago or so, there's like a town-wide survey that was sent out. It's almost like a survey, services satisfaction survey that they're looking to potentially, they put out an RFP or get an RFP together to put that out again. So I don't know what our role would be, if that's something we could contribute to, or not financially, but just contribute to the questions. Anyways, so that might be coming down the pipe, but otherwise that's it.
Thanks, Sarah. Legislative update is me. I have had the opportunity in the last 3 or 4 weeks to go to several of our state representatives' office hours. We had constituents who were interested in speaking with our state representatives about addressing the return to in-person learning at a state level. And I felt like it was important to attend those meetings and to support our constituents and be there, to take notes and see if there were ideas or action items that came from our state representatives that I could bring back to the board and possibly we could participate. It's primarily me just sitting there listening, to be honest. I don't typically try and say a lot because I do feel like I'm just there as an observer. It's been really informative. The take-home message after going to several of their office hours, I also attended the DEMS meeting on Tuesday night, and Chris Chiazzo spoke then as well. The take-home message is that getting anything getting any of the mandates changed at a legislative level is incredibly cumbersome. It takes a very long time, and the House is not accepting new bills right now. And so the bills would have had to have already been put forward in order to make legislative progress rather. The second take-home message is that, we can continue to advocate to the appropriate, right? We're always looking to advocate to the appropriate level. And the feeling I got was that the appropriate level remains the main CDC, Pender Macon as the education commissioner, and of course, Governor Mills as ultimately the executor. So that's kind of what's been going on legislatively. Charter Committee.
Well, hey, that's me. The Charter Committee has done a lot of work over the last few months. We've gone through the charter. A red line is going to start going top to bottom at the next meeting. Expect that to take a little bit of time. There are a couple of pieces that are affecting or could affect the school board if council accepts them. One being pay. They did talk about increasing the pay because it hasn't been adjusted in 15 years. The big one though, it has to do with when elections would be for the school board, and there's still a lot of work that needs to happen before that can get to the voters to approve it. But they made a recommendation to move the vote for school board members to June, which in many ways is a really good thing because that would give us an opportunity to onboard new members over the summer when it's quieter. Our committees could really get underway as the school year starts. I think it would be a really good cadence for us if the community agrees to that. So more to come as that red line gets to town council. They'll look through all of these suggestions and changes and determine what's going to go to the voters, but just wanted to give you a heads up.
Great, thank you, Leanne. Agenda item 9.0 is student representative reports.
All right, thank you so much. So the 2021 spring events calendar for seniors has been announced by the high school. And I'm super happy to announce that it's just very comprehensive. We're getting a lot of things and I'm very excited. Just to outline a few, on May 15th from 6 to 9:30 at Sable Oaks in Portland, there's going to be a senior dinner, which is like a prom replacement, but it's like the same thing, but without dancing. So it's still really great. The May Awards Night video will be released on YouTube on Wednesday, May 19th at 6. The weeks of May 16th and 23rd are AP exams, so good luck to all the students who are taking those this year. On June 4th, starting at 11:15, that day, block 3 and 4 classes are canceled for seniors because we're going to be having a senior picnic, and that is actually our last day, so that's really exciting. The countdown is basically on now, which is really fun. Also, the video of Senior Awards Night is going to be released on June 8th at 6 p.m. Seniors will be having marching practice on June 10th from 9 to 10:30. The senior parade will be on June 12th, the day before graduation at 10 a.m. Seniors are also going to be getting lawn signs distributed. I don't know if any of you saw those last year, but we're going to be getting them again this year. And then finally, the big day, graduation is going to be on Sunday, the 13th at 7 at the Cross Insurance Arena, which I think is very great and exciting, and we're all looking forward to it. So that is awesome. That's it for this slide. We can go into the next one. Yes, there we go. Rehearsals for the high school's production of Macbeth are well underway, and we've been rehearsing both in the theater on the stormy days and then at the park on the beautiful days like today. We had a lovely rehearsal today. The shows are on June 5th at 2 and 6, like Mr. Legage said earlier, and then the rain date is June 6th. And honestly, I'm a part of this. I'm the creative director, and I'm also in the play. And it's so great to actually be back doing real theater, like performing. We're getting ready to perform for an audience, and it's been so fun working with people. So thank you so much to Mr. Legage and the activities department, and Miss Becker and Mr. Wesley, who are our directors, for putting this together for us. It's a great way to end my senior year. So we can go to the next slide. So here at the middle school, there was a planner cover design contest for 6th and 7th graders to design next year's planner. Also, tomorrow at the middle school, students will be taking part in Space Day, which will feature a large amount of speakers and presentations and activities led by NASA Associates, which is really cool. That's a Maine-wide event, so that's very exciting. Also, Teacher Appreciation Week was this past week, which I will talk about more on the next slide, which we can go to now. So this past week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and which I hope everyone took some time to celebrate, because really teachers are amazing. I would just like to extend a warm hand of gratitude to all of the staff in our district. I see firsthand with my dad, who is a teacher in the district, what you guys must go through every day. Those students may not say it as much as they should. I can undoubtedly speak on their behalf in saying that what every teacher does in the district is very, very appreciated. Scarborough schools are miles better than they would be without you, with you in them. And I hope that our community is able to do better by you moving forward, especially under the circumstances that our district is facing with the pandemic. So from me to you, thank you, all of you. Awesome. So that's it for me. And I'm going to hand it on over to Gabby.
Hey, Max, can I ask you a question before we move on?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I heard you talking about all of the exciting senior festivities, but I didn't hear you talk about the senior stroll. Is that going to happen?
The senior stroll? I have not heard it called the senior stroll. We are having a parade.
What do you call it? The one where you walk around the track and
I don't think that's happening, unfortunately. But that's the send-off, I think, is what it's called. I don't think that's happening. To my knowledge, it's not happening, but I could be wrong.
Oh, okay. Because I thought that capacity was going to be 100% after May 24th. So
I am not sure. Perhaps I could ask someone in the high school administration about that. I have not heard any news of that, but I would love to do that if we're able to.
Yeah, me too. I know that that's
It's a great day.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So
okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. So these are some silver linings of the past school year that staff and students at Wentworth had found. So although it seems like there have been many negative things this year, students were still able to find positive things, such as wearing their PJs when remote or spending more time with their family. And it's just great to see everyone positive and a good mindset, even with tough times. And I'll let everyone look at that for a little. Some interesting things.
What school is that from?
This is Wentworth. And then on to the next slide. This past Tuesday, Maine author Samara Cole Doyen hosted a live stream for students at 8 Corners. Samara is a children's book author and wrote the book Magnificent Homespun Magnificent Homespun Brown, which is a book about loving and feeling comfortable in one's skin. And this book was beautifully illustrated by Kaylani Juanita, and it won the Coretta Scott King Award for the illustrations. And each student at Eight Corners, and I believe the other primary schools too, will receive a copy of this book because Miss Shupp, a high school teacher, and the civil rights team from the high school received a grant from the Scarborough Education Foundation. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Max and Gabby. Agenda item 10.0 is new business. This evening, agenda item 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3 are the meeting minutes of March 18th, 2021, the meeting minutes of March 24th, 2021, and the meeting minutes of March 25th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Can we call the vote, please? Sandy, are you calling the vote this evening?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No
Yes,
worries.
I will just have my little handy paper here. Thank you for your patience. See, Diane goes away for a week and falls apart. Mrs. Giftis,
Yes.
Dr. Gill,
Yes.
Ms. Castellanos,
Yes.
Ms. Layton,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Yes.
Mrs. Seither,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Giftis.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to Kelly, as always, for getting those minutes prepared for us. Agenda item 10.4 is a Wentworth School donation. Sandy, do you have the donation or would you like me to tee it up?
I'd be happy to talk about it. Up in Augusta, there's a Department of Agriculture and Conservation and Forestry, and they have a program whereby money is put aside for anybody that purchases the agriculture specialty license plates. And that money turns into grant money. And a percentage of it has gone to our district, particularly to Wentworth, $1,000. And in speaking with Principal Crosby, they're considering to maybe use that money for the greenhouse, which is right now a little too small to get a whole classroom in the greenhouse. It's 8 by 12. And I think their dream is to expand that to be 18 by 30 so that an entire classroom could get into the greenhouse. So thank you from the state of Maine, and of course, Catherine Hewitt, who is our third grade teacher, who is the guru with the garden. We really appreciate her leadership, along with other members of the staff, with the work that they've done for our students to learn about agriculture. Thank you.
With that, do I have a motion to approve the donation as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, Sandy, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Giftis,
Yes.
Dr. Gill,
Yes.
Ms. Castellanos,
Yes.
Ms. Layton,
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Yes.
Mrs. Sider,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Giftis.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. 10.5 is school nutrition backpack program donation.
Yeah, so we have the Scarborough High School store typically on a yearly basis gives generous contributions to the school nutrition backpack program. And we just received a donation of $500 from the revenues that generated by the store for this year. We respectfully request that the school board approve acceptance of this donation on behalf of the backpack program, and many thank yous.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, Sandy, I think we're ready.
Mrs. Giftis. Mrs. Giftis.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Dr. Gill.
Yes.
Miss Castellanos.
Yes.
Miss Layton.
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom.
Yes.
Mrs. Sider.
Yes.
Mrs. Turner.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Ms. Giftis.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Agenda item 10.6. 10.6.1 is middle school spring coaches. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, I think you can call it.
Mrs. Giftis.
Yes.
Dr. Gill.
Yes.
Miss Castellanos.
Yes.
Miss Layton.
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom.
Yes.
Mrs. Sider.
Yes.
Mrs. Turner.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Ms. Giftis.
Yes.
Thank you. Sandy, I think we all really appreciate the flair with which you are saying our names. I think one of us started to giggle and then that was it. I can just see all the little boxes. And on that note, agenda item 11.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
One more time, Sandy.
Now, here we go. Mrs. Giftis.
Yes.
Dr. Gill.
Yes.
Miss Castellanos.
Yes.
Miss Layton.
Yes.
Mrs. Lindstrom.
Yes.
Mrs. Sider.
Yes.
Mrs. Turner.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Miss Giftis.
Yes.
Excellent, everyone. Have a lovely evening and a very happy Mother's Day this weekend.
You too.
Bye. 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 Bye.
Thank you. Bye.